Welcome back to Desperate Living. Now, Finland is not a country known for its horror movie output. You could arguably, no doubt some will argue, count the number of Finnish horror films on your fingers. You may have seen the 2008 film Sauna. If not, check that one out. And there are a handful of others, from Dark Floors to the Moonlight Sonata films to rare exports. It's a small but generally impressive selection of films from a nation that's not generally known for its movie output, full stop. But in the early 1950s, two significant Finnish films emerged that both played with ideas of the supernatural, witchcraft, and what we now are apparently obliged to call folk horror. One of these films, The White Reindeer, Valkoinen Pyörä, apologies if I'm mangling pronunciations, achieved some international acclaim, winning a special award at the 1953 Cannes Film Festival for Best Fairy Tale Film, rather impressively, the only known example of such an award, and would also go on to win a Golden Globe as the Best Foreign Film. The other film, The Witch Returns to Life, Noita Pala Elämään, has had less international impact and languished in relative obscurity since its original release in 1952. I first saw these two films in the late 1980s when I managed to obtain a VHS tape featuring off-air recordings of both from Finnish TV broadcasts. Curiously, Finland was a hotbed of horror movie fandom in the 1980s, and several people were active on the tape trading scene. A certain amusement was expressed at my interest in seeing these two films. The average Finnish horror fan was a defiant gorehound, but nevertheless the tape, a second or third generation copy of off-air recordings, with no subtitles of course, was duly sent over. Both films were more than I'd hoped they would be, even without the benefit of understanding the dialogue, and to be fair, neither of them actually needs subtitles for you to understand what's going on fairly clearly. I fell in love with both movies and would evangelise wildly about them at every opportunity, usually to indifferent response. British horror fans were also defiant gorehounds by and large. Eventually I loaned the tape to a friend and, of course, never saw it again. It took a long time to catch up with both movies after that. The two films are very different in style and content. The White Reindeer is essentially a fairy tale, albeit a rather dark one, while The Witch Returns to Life is a more playful, comedic story with a contemporary setting, similar in style perhaps to I Married a Witch. But behind these differences, the two films have a great deal in common. Both deal with female desire and sexuality, and the way that others, mostly though not exclusively men, respond to that. Curiously, the film that's generally seen as the more disposable is the one that makes the more pointed references to the fact that sexually precocious young women are seen as a threat by the wider society, here represented by superstitious and suspicious old people and lust-filled young men who don't take rejection well. The White Reindeer, on the other hand, is a little less sympathetic to its female protagonist, who really is the monster that she's made out to be.
Ensimmäinen elollinen olento, joka tulee vastaan kotiin palatessasi.
Niilo lähti ajamaan takaa valkoista villipeuraa. Löysimme hänet pahasta turusta. Tällaisessa tuntussa.
Se voi olla mitään muuta kuin se valkoinen poikapeura.
On sitä tekevästä taikauskoa. Eihän peuraa sillä tavalla voi miestä tappaa.
Peuraahan se Jounikin lähti takaa.
Ei se olekaan mikään tavallinen peura. Se on noidu.
In The White Reindeer, Pirata, played by Merjami Kuusmaninen, is a feisty woman in her 30s who we first see taking part in reindeer racing with herder Aslak, who she falls in love with. The pair marry, but Aslak's reindeer herding means that he is away for weeks at a time. The sexually frustrated Pirata, who we've already seen flirting with other herders, visits a local shaman with the wish to become somebody who's desired by all reindeer herders. In a case of be careful what you ask for, her wish is granted, but not in the way that she'd hoped. She's turned into what we might call a were reindeer, changing into a vampiric creature, who then further transforms into the white reindeer. This rare reindeer is indeed desired by all the herders, but once one of them is killed by it, the superstitious locals declare the reindeer to be a witch, Noita, and set out to hunt it down. Leading the hunt against the demonic beast is Aslak himself. The sexual politics of the white reindeer are pretty clear, it might seem. The film explores the idea that female desire is a literally monstrous thing that threatens the wider community. Whether that's something that is the genuine belief of the filmmakers or something that director Eric Blomberg is criticising is perhaps a little more ambiguous. The character of Pirata is a multifaceted one, at once tragic yet not particularly likeable, being driven by a selfishness that doesn't serve the insular community that she lives in. The reindeer herders need to spend time away from their loved ones in order for everyone to survive in a world where the reindeer is everything: property, food, source of clothing, transport, even pet. Yet her desires are something that we can all relate to, and her selfishness is understandable. However, the film portrays these desires in a decidedly dark way. Her sexuality is expressed in monstrous and animalistic forms, either as the white reindeer itself or the vampire that she becomes during mid-transformation. Needless to say, there's no on-screen transformation shown in the film. While the sexuality of Pirata is treated with some suspicion, Koasmanen brings her character to life as a more rounded and tormented person than she might have otherwise been. The choice of a 30-something actress to play the role is interesting. I can't say I know much about Laplander culture, but I'm assuming that most people would be married off much earlier in life in a close-knit and traditional community like this, and it's entirely possible that her character is supposed to be much younger. But the actor's maturity makes her sexuality more genuine. This is a woman who knows her mind and acknowledges her own needs. And she's got a mature attractiveness that perhaps reflects the rural world of the movie in a way that a younger actress might not have had. More significantly, perhaps, she's able to switch from happy-go-lucky to tortured to demonic with consummate ease. And it must be said that she shines out among a cast that doesn't always give great performances on the whole, though their authenticity as the characters they play more than compensates for any stilted dialogue delivery. The realist nature of the acting and the almost documentary footage of the lives of the reindeer herders and their communities is actually a real strength for the film. This is realism that feels alien. The insular community living in vast snowy wastelands, dressed in traditional costume, it's as far removed from our own lives as can be imagined. Curiously, while the film feels like it's a period piece, it might not be. The suggestion is that life for these people goes on with unwavering consistency and that the outside world never interrupts their culture. The film's impressive vistas of snow and desolation are helped by the monochrome photography, which reduces everything to black and white, mostly white, and adds a bleakness that makes Pirata's desperation all the more understandable. But on top of this realism, the film layers the fairy tale approach of the story of the white reindeer, bringing a fantastical and unsettling darkness to the narrative. The scenes where Pirata is in her vampiric stage are impressively creepy, with her fangs and bushy eyebrows combined with flashing eyes to create a creature that is both scary and seductive. It's the performance that makes the transformation seem authentic, but the lighting and editing also help create a sense of the gothic in this Arctic location. The result is a remarkable, unique and enthralling film that should be seen as one of the great horror movies of the 1950s. The White Reindeer, as I mentioned, had some international success, critically at least, winning awards and maintaining a reputation to this day. The Witch Returns to Life has had less impact, and if you were to ask critics, they would probably dismiss it as the lesser film, if they'd heard of it at all. A more lightweight fantasy that lacks both the production quality and the subtextual elements of its better-known companion piece. Yeah, I can understand that, but I have to say that for me, The Witch Returns to Life is not only the more entertaining of the two, but also the more interesting.
Menet tiehen, se häiritset. Hän on minun. Minä hänet löysin.
Halusit tutustua noitaan, paholaisiin. Löysit itsesi. Ei täällä. Suolla. Suolla minä tanssin sinulle.
Yksin minulle.
Verta, vahvan miehen verta!
Se on totta. Hän on noita.
He vainoavat minua. Te olette ainoa ystäväni. Auttakaa minua.
Poripaula. Tuletko sitten omaksi?
Tule läpi.
Olet hullu.
Ihmisen pitää olla hullu voidakseen rakastaa.
Definitely not a period piece. This film tells the story of an archaeological dig that unearths the body of a witch who's been staked. After removing the stake and taking the body away, they then discover a naked girl lying in the pit. The film briefly plays with the idea that she might not actually be the reincarnated witch and that the local peasants and landowner who view her with suspicion are mistaken, but it soon abandons this idea and acknowledges that yes, she does have magical powers. And foremost amongst these, possibly not due to the supernatural it must be said, is the fact that all men are driven crazy with desire for her, while women treat her with suspicion and fear. None too subtle then. But there's more to this than a simplistic idea that sexually free and flirty young women will excite men and arouse feelings of jealousy among women, although that's certainly a reasonable point to make. For one thing, the gender divide is not absolute. The other main younger female character is not irrationally hateful towards the young witch, while the older generation, both male and female, wishes to persecute her. It's less about a fear of female sexuality than it is about the way that the old resent the young because of their vibrancy, their energy, and their beauty. And the film is very much on the side of Bridget, the reincarnated witch, who's presented as a force of nature, quite literally, as she seems to be as much a part of the sunny orchards and countryside, no snow here, as any of the trees and animals. While she torments and teases the men who fall in love with her and start to fight amongst themselves, you never get the idea that this is purely malicious. While she certainly causes chaos and destruction, it's not hard to think that everybody involved deserves what they get thanks to their treatment of her. As she works her way through the men, setting them against each other, we're aware that none of them was especially likeable to begin with. Even before she shows up, there's the suggestion that one character is already trying to seduce another's wife, and while there's much talk about the beast inside being released by her, you get the idea that it was never that far from the surface to begin with. Even those who oppose her do so for selfish reasons. The peasants are driven by superstition and hatred of outsiders, and Baron Hallberg, who lords it over the locals, encourages their antagonistic behaviour not because he really believes the girl is a witch, but because he's bettered so many locals in the past that he fears she might be an illegitimate offspring come to lay claim to his fortune. Roland F. Hallström's film would be a fun little romp about hypocrisy and lust under any circumstances, but the movie is really made by Merle Germain as Bridget, the feisty object of desire. Certainly it's easy to understand why any man would fall in love with her. She has this effortless sexuality and flirtatious charm that's quite arresting, and even when she's being shown as evil, she has a twinkle in her eye. At times, she resembles Barbara Steele in her early Italian films, having a similar combination of seductiveness and devilment, innocence and maliciousness, and she dominates the film entirely. And it would be remiss of us not to mention the fact that she spends a fair amount of this 1952 film naked, or at least dressed only in transparent net curtains. It's teasing, glimpsed nudity admittedly, but it's still pretty remarkable for the time, and probably why the film didn't travel as well as The White Reindeer. In America, it finally showed up on the roadshow circuit where no critic ever ventured, and in other countries it was probably a censorship hot potato. It's a shame because if the film had been given a wider international release, it's easy to imagine that Maine might have become one of the great international sex symbols of the age. If Bridget Bardot could cause a sensation for showing much less flesh and giving a much lesser performance in And God Created Woman, then she really deserved the same. Instead, she made just 5 films in Finland and died practically forgotten in 1974, aged just 44. The White Reindeer has been issued on Blu-ray in the UK and the US and has built quite a reputation among folk horror enthusiasts. Maybe not the most well-known of movies, but one that's certainly been seen more in the last decade than it has been since the 1950s. The Witch Returns to Life, on the other hand, remains almost unknown except by the most dedicated movie archaeologists and self-proclaimed experts in the obscure, like me. Both deserve to be seen, but the latter is particularly crying out for rediscovery. Maybe the Blu-rays of The White Reindeer didn't sell all that well and none of the boutique labels has felt inclined to go looking for more of the same. Perhaps the rights are caught up in ownership hell. Whatever the reason, your only option right now is a seemingly out-of-print Finnish DVD, a grey market American DVD that's probably also out of print, or low-quality online versions. None of these seem to have English subtitles, so you'll have the same viewing experience that I had back in the 1980s. If you enjoy this kind of video essay, feel free to subscribe, hit the like button and the alert bell, and share with everybody that you know. And let us know in the comments what you think of these films if you've seen them, or have similar obscure movies to recommend. On the other hand, if you'd rather just watch me digging through old movie posters and examining cheap crap from budget supermarkets, let us know that too in the comments. Basically just leave us a comment, okay? And don't forget to also check out our sister site, The Overlooked Hotel, where you'll find a growing collection of mini documentaries about forgotten moments of history and pop culture. If you like this kind of thing, you'll like that kind of thing. I'll put the link in the description. As ever, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.